Shalom Chabrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and this evening got a very interesting broadcast for you guys. I've done quite a bit of research today, spent quite a few hours working on this, translating several different pages from the Russian language. Some news you're going to hear about that you guys probably have not heard about in the West, that's for sure. So let's get right into it. It's called NATO's Future Plans for Israel, is what we've entitled this particular broadcast this evening. It is an investigative report as well as some just some biblical thoughts to share with you as well. Mostly an investigative broadcast here. I just want to share a few scriptures with you as we go along. Jeremiah 31:10. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations. And I think this is appropriate because the plans that NATO has with Israel, and they're going to trick Israel into this. So I think it's good for my brothers and sisters in Israel, the Israeli government, to pay heed to what I'm saying, but especially the nations that have their evil plans against Israel. You need to pay heed as well. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd doeth his flock. So God is not going to play when it comes to Israel. In fact, in the book of Baruch, it's one of the canons that it's in I believe it's in the Syriac Codex, but it's not in the Jewish nor the Christian Bibles of today. But in the book of Baruch, he actually makes a very interesting statement, or the Lord does to him, when he sees a vision about Israel's end and the judgments that will come upon the entire world. Those judgments are very severe, very much like the things that we're anticipating to come with the upcoming Planet X as it comes through. But anyway, he does say something that caught even me by surprise, and that was he told Baruch that the one safe place there will be for his people that keep his law will be Israel. Or actually he states where you are now, and he was in the Kidron Valley. Thought that was interesting. I'd never saw that before. I wanted to share that little insight with you. Anyway, this is the whole thing that I'm wanting to build for you guys here. We talked a little bit the other day about Armageddon or Harmageddon, the Valley of Megiddo, the Jezreel Valley, different names that we have here. And I stated to you that I believe that what we're seeing is the groundwork being laid for the future fulfillment of Armageddon. It's written in the book of Revelation, where all the nations are gathered together for battle. God brings them there for judgment. And as I stated to you, I believe that Israel is going to allow NATO forces to come into Israel to possibly do an attack on Syria, on Damascus. Now this is going to involve Russia, because Russia is there to back Bashar al-Assad. It'll also involve Hezbollah, Iran, all the different nations of the region will be there. But it's only to set the stage. You see, God is bringing the forces down and getting all the players involved there in the Middle East. And NATO will just be one of the first set of troops there that'll be there in Israel. So I began to do some research to see how much truth is there in this. We know that Israel has tried repeatedly to get into NATO itself, but has been blocked by Turkey every single time. But you might be surprised to find out just how active Israel has been in recent years, and especially this year with NATO member forces. Let's take a look at this. IDF, U.S. European Command undertake joint military drills. This is on February 22nd of 2016. Yes, you are seeing United States military personnel in Israel. Now, there's a good side and a bad side, like I say to this. The good side is the United States military troops are there in Israel, which strengthens Israel's resolve for protection. But Israel continually looks to NATO for protection, or NATO forces, in order to survive Iran, Hezbollah, etc. Now, the U.S. coalition is there. And they're there for ballistic missiles, no less. Okay, it says the IDF, the United States European Command. By the way, when it says European Command, that is the NATO force terminology being used there. This is not just U.S. troops. This is the European Command, which is the NATO branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, began their 8th ballistic missile defense exercise today. Now, that was on February 22nd. The joint exercise, known as Juniper Cobra, has taken place every 2 years since 2001. Its primary purpose is to enhance permeability between the two militaries and improve joint defensive capabilities. The drills are not undertaken in preparation for any specific or potential scenario. This is something being reported on Breaking Israel News. Now, in this case here right now, though, they're definitely dealing with some serious scenarios. Maybe in the past they weren't looking at that, but now there's definitely a scenario. Over 1,700 U.S. service members, civilians, and contractors will also participate in the exercise aimed at addressing potential computer-related challenges that Israel could face in the future. The date for the planned exercise has not yet been announced. That's a different exercise altogether. 1,700 U.S. service members. Now remember, in Jordan right now, there are 1,600 British military personnel. Russia is really getting surrounded in this whole quagmire here. But you're getting right down to the nitty-gritty, guys. I mean, when it comes down to it, God is going to protect His people. God is going to fight for His people. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person that's Israeli God is going to fight for. He is coming for those that are looking for the Mashiach, that's looking for the Messiah. This is who He's going to protect. And all these nations, in one way or the other, have been guilty of the evils that have happened to the Israeli people down through the years, down through their last 2,000 years of being in exile, which brings me to a scripture I wish I would have brought in here, but totally forgot about it. And that's where God speaks about they went overboard with what they did to Israel in her exile. It's kind of a paraphrased terminology there. Anyway, continuing on, British troops to support peacekeeping force between Egypt and Israel. Now, this is nothing new. The MFO, the multinational force and observers that are there in the Sinai, this has been going on for a number of years, but there again, February 26, 2016, Jewish News reported this here, that around 100 British troops are to be sent to Egypt to support the international peacekeeping force, the defense secretary has said. Michael Fallon said a squadron of Royal Engineers will be deployed for up to 12 weeks from next month. They will provide engineering support to the two multinational force observers, which operates in the Sinai Peninsula and seeks to oversee 1979 peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. Again, another set of troops there in the Middle East there, right there on Israel's border there, that could easily lend help to any kind of conflict. And also, the other thing is what we're trying to show you is that God is drawing all the nations down to Israel for the great battle that'll be coming in the future. Another one, Israeli-German armies hold joint training exercise in Israel to practice urban warfare. Now, the photograph is U.S. military and Israelis once again. It is a file photo. But anyway, Haaretz on October 28th of 2015 reported this here, that over 100 German soldiers arrived in Israel 3 weeks ago as a part of the largest joint training ever between the two countries. Again, notice the timing, October 28th, 2015. They already knew that Russia had their military there in the region. But now the Germans come in, over 100 of them, supposedly for urban warfare training exercise. Now, these are the very people that were guilty of the Holocaust. Their military is in Israel. I mean, think of the absurdity of this. Oh my gosh, friends. Let's look at Joel 3. Verse 2, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people, for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. What's Germany doing down in Israel? Oh, guerrilla warfare? Do you think Germans are faced with guerrilla warfare? Okay, they might justify the idea that they have Syrian refugees within their society now. But you know what? The Germans went there to try to see what in the world was going on with Russia. And as I said before, the best place you can go is Israel if you want to look at Damascus. Oh my gosh. Gets more interesting. Now this here is a Russian website, Anosmy. It is anosmy.ru. You can look it up. You can translate it if you so desire. Google can give you a little bit of help on that. I do have a wife that can help me as well on this to make sure that we're getting the right translation. Arab monarchies are rapprochement with Israel against the Shiites. It's the title of this particular article here. Israel, by the way, is taking advantage of the Syrian conflict, is what we're looking at right here in this article. Now, the point that I'm wanting you to see again, watch what's going on here in the Middle East. Israel has for a long time wanted to be able to take out Iran's nuclear capabilities. And Israel knows that right now that Saudi Arabia and Turkey are wanting to invade Syria. And they've got Iran as a problem to deal with as well, the Saudis do. So this is the best opportunity Israel has ever had to be able to side with enough forces there to make an attack on Iran with having some backup power to stop Iran from just wiping Israel out with all their barrage of bombs that they would launch at Israel. Anyway, according to the Russian site here, Giles Mill, he states here, according to the Sunday Times, the former head of the Mossad, Mir Dagan, visited Saudi Arabia to discuss military cooperation in the framework of a strike on Iran. In addition, we know that Israel has for 20 years supported almost official relations with Qatar. Therefore, it can be assumed that the Israeli leadership, anyway, there are links with the governments of countries in the region there. So, and this is here on March the 4th. This just happened here. This just came out. That Israel, speaking about how Israel had gone to the Saudis, working on a plan to hit Iran. This lets you know the whole idea that the Saudis and the Turks are going to hit Syria is still a very real option on the table because, Israel's taking advantage of what they can do. And if they're talking about it right now, they do not believe the ceasefire is going to hold. And Turkey is unquestionably about to attack Bashar al-Assad's forces. You're going to see that in just a moment here. Continuing on also on the same website here, says Turkey may launch military actions in north of Syria at the same time trying to increase its presence and influence in northern Iraq. It will not only fight the Islamic State, but also restrain the expansion of the Kurds, raising the stakes in a confrontation with old rivals, Russia and Iran. Okay, now this is Russian news right here telling you that if Turkey does this, they're risking a confrontation between Russia and Iran. They're both going to hit back at Turkey. And Turkey has a powerful military. Now, here's the funny thing. The U.S. seems to be holding back a little bit, but it's not going to stay that way. Look what the United States just did. Now, you guys probably have no idea about this because it's not on the American news. Okay, but American bombs as a human value, as the title of the article. This is on Belfopol.com, Russian military political review. It says America has delivered to Turkey the smart bombs. These bombs are used to destroy any capital of fortification, penetrate reinforced concrete barriers, thickness of almost 2 meters. The Turks now argue that going to continue to fight only with LIH, but who would believe them? Nobody believes it. Now the main goal of the Turks is the Kurds in Iraq and Syria. And the United States has armed them with the smart bomb. I mean, my gosh, friends, the United States is pushing Erdogan to get into this battle. They want him to. And let me say something to you else, friends. I really got to say this because I have really watched a lot of people just falling hook, line, and sinker for Erdogan to be the Antichrist. And Walid Shoebat is pushing this as hard as he possibly can go. And I don't mean to be different with this man, but I differ with him. You know, to me, he is pushing what the Vatican wants him to push. And all you have to do your homework. He is 100% backed by the Vatican. And Walid, when he first came out, and of course his whole background was lied about, faked about, CNN busted him on these things, you know, I'm sure the Vatican didn't appreciate that because they just didn't know what the Vatican's intentions were, or otherwise CNN would have never tried to expose Walid Shoebat in the first place. And nothing against Walid Shoebat as far as him professing to be a Christian. You know, Walid Shoebat is Catholic. He married a Catholic girl. He was a Palestinian living in the West Bank. I agree with all that. The Israelis say he never was in prison, but that's beside the point. My point is, when he came out, Walid really pushed the idea of the Mahdi. This was the Quran's version of the coming Antichrist. You got to remember, the Vatican, they wrote the Quran. Muhammad couldn't write nothing. Come on, the Islamic people, Arabic people, you need to wake up as well. The Quran was never written by Muhammad. Kaji, his wife, a Catholic, basically a Catholic nun that the Vatican talked into marrying this boy, a wealthy Arabic woman who became a Catholic, she marries him. Giulio Meotti, not Giulio Meotti, but Alberto Rivera exposes all this that the Vatican did through Cardinal Bea, who clearly, B-E-A is how you spell Cardinal Bea's last name, who clearly taught these things that the Vatican did this in their secret archives. All right, now, the Vatican has got to continue this on, though, because they used this great movement of the Muslim community, creating the Muslim community from the Arabic people, from the Ishmaelites' children, in order to be able to attack and kill, as Alberto Rivera says, the true Christian people back in those days in northern Africa, as well as kill off anyone that opposed the Catholic Church that was moving that Constantine had put together. This was the whole point. And to create a coming prophet, they created a revival amongst the Arabic people, and then they basically made Muhammad. Now the thing is in their writings they spoke about a coming Mahdi. Why? Because the Vatican knew from the writings of the apostles, John and stuff, that there was a coming Antichrist. They needed a diversion, because by this time, hundreds of years had gone by, and they already knew that many of the true believers were pointing to them to be the Antichrist. So they had to create a diversion. And that diversion was a prophetic coming of Mahdi, the Antichrist, that would be in the Quran. And that's what they wrote. Now, they need you to have that Mahdi. So they have to create a Mahdi. And they have done that with Erdogan, excuse me. And the Turkish president, Erdogan, is their Mahdi. And again, as Walid Shoebat pushed this whole idea of the coming Mahdi and was accepted in all the evangelical circles, every one of them brought this man in, and they really pushed this new doctrine of an Arabic Antichrist, when the church didn't even believe in that. This is what gets me about the church. The church has gone so far away from what they were teaching originally, and now they're believing this nonsense of a Muslim Antichrist. Because of one scripture in the Bible that has been perverted. Your Muslim Antichrist is sitting in the Vatican. He united all the religions. And Erdogan's not going to unite. You think he's going to make a one global government? You think he's going to make a one global religion? No, sir, he's not. But again, the Vatican has got, once again, Walid Shoebat back up on the soapbox there to preach that Erdogan is that Antichrist. And they'll get him all back in the circles again. They get all the world riled up, and then that's going to be their Antichrist. Erdogan. You know, I sincerely, pray for Walid. You know, I don't think the man means bad, by no means. You know, he just needs some direction. He needs God to open up his eyes and to forsake the Catholic Church's false theology. So anyway, going back to this, what are we looking at here? The Turks have been given a smart bomb because they're trying to get Russia to do this fight. You know, see, the United States, they don't really want to put their own missiles in there, but they're doing their ballistic missile test with Israel, and now they've got this really interesting, what was it we were just speaking about a moment here ago? Let's go back to that again. This is, the United States, here we go. The U.S. has got 1,700 U.S. service members. Civilians and contractors will also participate in exercises amid addressing potential computer-related challenges. cyber attacks and stuff. Brother, sister, they are gearing up for a major confrontation. The United States is planning on jamming Russia's defenses and everything right there from Israel. They're going to allow the Turks and the Saudis to come in at the same time. They're going to allow Israel to go ahead and hit Iran. Now, it's a good thing for Israel to hit Iran, but the problem is what Israel is forgetting about is the prophecies that are written in our own Bible, written in the Tanakh, that say that God is going to bring all the nations down to Israel for judgment. That includes the United States as well. As I said, I thank God that they're willing to stand with Israel right now, but believe me, they do not have the good of Israel at heart, friends. Like it says in Joel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. The United States, through John Kerry, is guilty, the Obama administration, of parting the land of Israel. So yes, they're there in Israel. But you can count on one thing, friends. It's there for judgment. That's why God has them there in Israel. Zephaniah chapter 3 says, Therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, unto the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon mine indignation, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. Zephaniah 3:9, For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent. So by the way, and that's the Yod He Vav He, and by the way, in the Qumran scrolls, they never use a tetragrammaton of Yod He Vav He in the modern Hebraic language. They use the ancient Paleo-Hebrew for his divine name. There must be a reason behind it, I'm sure. They wouldn't have just done that for no reason. All right, so now continuing on here. This is another incredible Russian news source. And again, things you're not going to know about because the United States doesn't want you to know these things. On the strengthening of NATO forces in Europe, the United States sent $3.4 billion to the NATO forces in Central and Eastern Europe. Plans to President Barack Obama. We are talking about increasing the number of heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and other equipment it is planned to make in order to keep growing Russian aggression in the region. On the White House plans to allocate the $3.4 billion announced to the publication of a few officials. Why are they doing that? Because the United States knows that they're fixing to start this war, and Russia's right there to back up Bashar al-Assad. And they know that what Russia's going to do is Russia's going to take, and then Russia's going to strike against the European nations as a result. So therefore, the United States is preparing on both sides of the front. But it really has nothing to do with that. God is preparing to bring them all down there to the Middle East anyway. Now, there has to come a time, though, that Russia and the United States are not going to be fighting against each other, because God said he's going to bring them all down there. But then again, that may not ever happen either, because as long as they're there, God is going to bring the judgment. And it could even be a battle that ends up in Israel. Because remember, Russia signed an agreement with Mahmoud Abbas for the West Bank for the drilling rights, and also the Golan is considered part of Syria. So they could all be fighting right there in Israel, and then God bring judgment down upon the whole group. All right, now let's continue on. This is something, this is just kind of give you a little bit of the background of the history of this. This is the Haaretz on August 31st of 2012, bring Israel into NATO. Decision makers ought to consider devising a new security architect, one that would deter Iran and guarantee Israel's long-term survival. A radical alternative to war is required, one that would make Israel a member of NATO, protected by the one for all and all for one policy of the 28-member alliance. But of course, Turkey has blocked that ever since. Turkey is not going to let that happen. As seen in April 23rd, 2012, today's Zaman, that means today's time. It's a Hebrew word, Zaman means time. Because of Ankara's veto of Israel will not attend the NATO summit due to the take place May 20th and 21st in Chicago. So they decide not to go. So it's been an ongoing war between Turkey and Israel over this whole thing for NATO. But again, Israel's trying to get involved in it to be able to have some backing. I don't think, though, Israel's ever going to become a member. And really, what need do they have to become a member? They don't really need to become a member because everything's already planned for them. And of course, this article here on the Turkey agenda, Israel's secret war against Turkey over the NATO membership. Against the leverage, Israel has occasionally questioned Turkey's NATO membership. Now, this is a very interesting article too, by the way. This is actually a regular English article here. It's called the website's called Turkey's Agenda. And Israel brings out a very good point. This article here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was in 2015. I forgot to put the date on it. But it said, against the leverage, Israel has occasionally questioned Turkey's NATO membership, a move which was supported by some Republican politicians in the United States, such as Anthony Weiner and Rick Perry, who argued in January of 2012 that Turkey is run by Islamic terrorists. Israel's criticism on Turkey's NATO membership was significantly increased in 2014 as Turkey faced some crisis in its foreign policy. For example, when there was a problem between Turkey and Cyprus over gas exploration in the southern part of the island, Israeli newspaper criticized Ankara as being provocative and argued that Israel is the heart and soul of NATO's southeastern flank against Islamic terrorism, while Turkey is a troublemaker in the region and leading sponsor of the terrorist organization Hamas. In May 2014, Nicholas Seidel wrote that Turkey's close relationship with China may put NATO Intel Tech at risk and interception by the Chinese army, and argued that NATO should support Israel's deterrence capability if it needs a reliable ally in the heart of the Middle East. Now, the whole point is, if you read the article for yourself, it clearly defines all the ties that Turkey has with terrorism, and they've always had it. And yet, because they're a NATO member, they are so backed by the United States. It makes no sense whatsoever. But could it be that God has never allowed Israel to become a NATO member because God knew He was going to bring judgment upon them? If Israel became a NATO member, what would that do? That would make NATO responsible for defending Israel regardless. Just like we see in the case of Turkey. Regardless of how crooked, low-down, deceiving, lying, worthless Erdogan is, and he's really just a puppet for the Vatican. And let me say this, Mr. Erdogan, if you had any brains at all, you would realize that the Pope of Rome is the one pushing your buttons. He's making you think you're somebody great when you're not. You're nothing but a pawn in their big old chess game. But I guarantee you one thing, God is dragging him with his hook in the Pope's jaw right down to Israel, because he's going to be judged right along with the rest of them. And by the way, as I did a lot of research on this, it's not just the United States, it's not just the Germans, it's the Italians, it's the Greeks. They've all been doing military exercises with Israel here recently. You know, this is on some sources. I didn't even publish the sources on here. You know, the reason why I didn't do it was because it's some of the Arabic, it's through the Palestinians and stuff that are against the Jewish people to begin with. But, gosh, friends, I'll tell you what. Even the Palestinians, you guys are really being deceived by the Roman Catholic Church and have no idea. Let's take a look at this one more scripture here and we'll close here. Zechariah 14:2. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it towards the south. Now this is the final end of it right here, guys. This will be the final end of it when this part here happens. And if you notice, though, Jerusalem, it seems to be separate from up there, Armageddon, or Armageddon, the mountain of Megiddo. in the northern part of Israel. God brings the nations there, or the Valley of Jehoshaphat. He brings the nations there. But now they're brought to Jerusalem. Is it the battle starts up there and then moves down to Jerusalem? It seems to be more along that line. And maybe it's because the two witnesses have kept these militaries away from Jerusalem the entire time with supernatural signs and wonder until their deaths. And then when their deaths come, then the devil is able to move in. We are in a very serious time, friends, very serious time. If there's ever been a time to pray for Israel, I encourage you to pray for her now. Her people need prayer. And I encourage you guys as well. Stand with us as we stand with Israel. And if this news broadcast is a blessing to you, support it. We do ask for your help in doing that. By the way, I told you we were planning on trying to get to the front lines there where the battle is going on in Syria. As I'm seeing these developments now more and more what's going on, we need to get there as quickly as we possibly can, and we need your help to do so. I wouldn't ask you if we didn't need it, but we do need your help. That is a costly endeavor every time. Even though we're close to Israel, it's still a very costly endeavor because everything in Israel is enormously, it's overpriced. It really is. Anyway, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Shalom. Good evening.